Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of the Father Talks podcast. I am your host, Mike D, and today's guest is Miss Savannah Brown. Savannah is a U.S. Army veteran, police officer, Master of Social Work student, but most importantly, she's a mother. She's a mother figure, figuring it out in real time. Excuse me. It's been a long day already. So, Savannah, hey, welcome to the show. I am absolutely blessed and privileged to have you on the show. Tell us some more about you.
Thank you so much for having me, first off.
Absolutely.
More about me. So you pretty much summed all the bullet points up. Um, I've come to this point in my life where I've had to recognize a lot of the unhealthy patterns in my immediate family dynamics that I grew up with and how it impacted a lot of the decisions in my life to include career choices.
Okay.
There's been benefits to that, but there's also been some setbacks, of
Right.
course. Um, but it's allowed me a level of clarity at this point in my life to make the decisions that I've made and stand on kind of the boundaries that I have had to set in my life
Right.
in order to move forward. So that's kinda just where I'm at in my journey, and
Right.
yeah.
Well, I can tell you, that was one of the things that kind of struck me about, your profile and that when I was reading through everything, because learning to set boundaries, learning, for me, I'm 52. I've been through a lot, you know, dealing with family. I mean, and I'll even say, some issues with, like uh, my ex and my girls.
Mhm,
There've always been a lot of drama, and now as adults, there's still lingering stuff,
mhm,
and I've just had to say, you know what? I have always been a present father. I've always done the things that, I felt like a father was supposed to do, and I cannot apologize, you know what, for being present. Sometimes I was a difficult dad. I'm aware of that,
mhm,
but I never had any resources, and that's part of the reason for the show, because I want to get men help so they don't make the same, mistakes that I did, not, I want guys to be able to communicate with their kids in a way that
mhm,
is coming from love and
mhm,
so they can express that, because oftentimes, men, we don't know how to express ourselves. So things come out as anger, and frustration when it's genuinely love, but we don't know how to express it. So we get mad and it turns into something that it shouldn't be.
mhm.
So,
Well, I think anger tends to be the only acceptable emotion from a social standpoint that we
right.
accept as far as men expressing emotions. And one of the things I always talk to my coworkers about is that emotional regulation, emotional intelligence, that's crime prevention. That's family intervention, you know? So when we're showing up on all these DV calls, whether it's physical or verbal, you realize that a lot of adults later in life are dealing with issues that have happened in childhood and adolescence.
Right. And I see that a lot with men.
And how lack of communication shows up, especially within family dynamics, and makes it a lot harder
Right.
to get that love across.
Yeah. And I know, particularly, particularly in black families, boys are, we are, taught to be tough.
Mhm,
We don't, I can tell you right now from experience, like my cousin, even, he made me fight this kid for like 2, 3 days. I lost a fight.
mm,
You gonna fight him again because you ain't about to lose. You know,
mhm,
and that was my mentality. Growing up.
yeah,
I'm not gonna be second to nobody. I'm not taking no BS. And I will fight anybody that I need to.
mhm,
But that same thing drifted into, some of my parenting, and it took me a long time to realize that, hey, this ain't the way, so this is what these conversations. So for you, how has your family dynamic, affected you, and this, let's say particularly with your father.
So my dad, he was a military guy too, he was Army. So we were he was stationed at Fort Irwin in California. That's
Okay.
where my brother and I were born, and then my sister was born in Providence. She's the oldest, my brother's the middle child, I'm the youngest.
Right.
My parents had divorced already when I was around 5, from
Okay.
what I can recall in the conversations that I've had with my mother. But when I got older and I was a young woman and I was you're going out, you're dating, and you're trying to understand the vetting process and
Right.
have those conversations. I didn't have that. And so that showed up in my own individual relationships because of
Right.
the discord between my mom and dad, and then her telling me that, he had a serious issue with infidelity.
Mhm.
And it just got to the point where, she just said, "This enough is enough,"
Right.
and she wanted to have 6 kids with him, because they both come from really big families, but it didn't work out, and so she said, "Okay, we're at our crossroads, and I think it's best that we separate." And because of that, there were some summers where we would see him, like, fly
Mhm.
down to see him, but after a few summers, that just kind of came to a slow.
Right. So, did you guys stop having a relationship with your dad because of the divorce? Or was it, there's no military demand that would stop you from seeing your kids as far as I'm concerned, but,
Right.
you know, was this more, him not being able
I
to
honestly think it was a combination between the
Okay.
both. I think it was a combination between both of them. She just wasn't willing to be a participant anymore, and I
Mm,
think it's hard to change the dynamics when they've been set so way for so long, right? If she's
right.
tolerated my indiscretions for so long, why are you changing now?
Yeah.
And, once you start setting those boundaries with whoever and you no longer benefit from them in whatever way that you were able to before,
Mhm.
sometimes they'll look at it and just say, "Well, it's a problem." And I'm the youngest, but I'm also the most outspoken, so I've
Okay.
always been the one that, we sit down, we have a family meeting, we call out what the issues are, let's talk through it, let's and my dad's not like that, and
R
so he continued to have a relationship with my siblings when they were in high school, but I was not included in that relationship because I was the honest kid, I was the kid that's gonna call it out,
right.
and it's kind of hard when you're not as forgiving as my
Other
mom.
people. Right.
I'm not as forgiving as my grandmother is because he's not my son, he's my
Right.
father, and so
Right.
I can still have honest conversations with him and call out whatever shortcomings or strengths or, "Hey, I wouldn't have struggled in this relationship if you had been the father to show me how a man is supposed to treat me. Tell me
Right.
what the dating process is. Tell me how to weed certain men out. Tell me how explain to me that, you shouldn't tolerate infidelity in a relationship because it's gonna erode the family dynamic. It's gonna erode your self-esteem." And we didn't have that. And so because I was an honest kid, again, so we didn't have that relationship. And I think the last time that we spoke in person was when I had graduated basic training and I don't know, a while ago.
Hey, but that's fair. That's fair. You know, and here's the thing. So the I wanted other men to hear this conversation because and as hard as it is to admit, I had an issue with infidelity myself, but my issue stemmed more from a need to be loved.
Mm. Mhm,
Okay, so me and my mom, I love my mom to death. Okay, my mom and my dad are great people, but they weren't emotionally supportive people. They weren't the type of people who they would give you a hug for no reason or tell you that they loved you. And
mhm,
growing up, missing so many things, like, so my real father has never been a part of my life. I could be standing next to him in the mall, wouldn't know it, if some I just wouldn't know him.
mhm,
My stepdad's always been there, but my stepdad even is, he had a troubled relationship with his dad,
mhm,
and he joked with us all the time, playing around, but it was never a hug or an I love you, you know. And I found later on in life that I was constantly searching for that, you
mhm,
know. So I was sabotaging relationships because sometimes it was more I didn't feel worthy because I mean, hell, nobody else loved me. Why, this isn't going to work out.
mhm,
I want other men to see the impacts of our decisions and learning to get help with the things that we're struggling with before we damage our children. I've got 3 older daughters that we have I want to say a complicated relationship. Sometimes things are good. Other times, they're bringing up things from the past that, like, how many more times can I apologize that I grounded you for a month? Or how many more times can I, say, I'm sorry because I spanked you? I was a dad figuring it out,
mhm,
with zero support. You know,
mm,
my girl's mom, she wanted to be the kid's friend and I had to be the disciplinary. That was my sole job, you know, make sure that the lights didn't get shut off, and to make sure that the kids always stayed in line with their mom.
And
And
that goes back to social gender norms, right?
yeah,
Of we define as masculinity, how you're allowed to show up in that family dynamic. And
yeah,
so it doesn't leave room for anything else.
right. And again, I am still learning, and I want other men to see the effects of their decisions, especially because boys are a little different, but when it comes to their daughters, our relationship with our daughters shapes how their relationships are going to be.
Yes.
Our examples show our daughters, what, hey, this is okay. This is not okay. I've always preached to my girls that, what, you do not want to be somebody else's housewife. Okay. Maybe if that's a decision that you guys make together, maybe you make that kind of money and you can do that, but you need to have something of your own
Yeah.
because what happens if that person dies? What if it happens if that person, if for whatever reason, you're not with that person?
Mhm.
You want to bring something to the table. You don't want to be the table,
Yes.
and these are the things that I want men to see. And this was one of the reasons why, like, I was reading everything. I'm like, oh my God, she is going to be the perfect example to make men understand that, what, we need to do better because what we do has an impact on our daughters.
Yes, and I will say that even, aside from my mother's relationship with my biological father, because we did have a
Yes.
stepfather in the house growing
Yeah.
up as well. We had a little bit of a blended family.
Yes.
But again, it was still tumultuous, it was chaotic, there were
Yeah.
arguments, there were physical fights between them,
Yeah.
and so realizing how she treated my brothers very different than how we were like, boys were treated like they could do no wrong.
Right.
Right? And the girls were, "You're raised to function. I am raising you to be a functional adult."
Mm.
Chores, clean, certain things that you have to get done, make sure you're focused on your academics because I wasn't allowed to start dating until 18, but my brother was bringing girlfriends to the house to stay the night, in, like, middle school, and so it's, like,
Woo.
very different
Oh
dynamics.
yeah. That's whoa.
Yes,
My
growing
kids,
up.
my kids be on me about who got a tattoo when. Okay, and
Right.
none of them got a tattoo until they were getting ready to graduate, or
Yeah.
were graduated. So
Uh-huh. And so, once we became adults,
yes,
I moved out early, and started, trying to form my own life, and, Uncle Sam helped me figure that out, and,
I know.
you're starting your career, you're earning a paycheck, you're living on your own, and so being separated allowed me to grow in a way that I knew I wasn't going to be able to had I stayed with my mom, and even till
Right.
this day, um serve your time in the military. I got out. I started working civilian law enforcement. I settled here in Washington. I bought another place out here. I had realized that I was the youngest, but I was the eldest in a lot of ways
Right.
as far as independence is concerned.
Okay.
My siblings had always been codependent on my mom. So wherever she
Mhm.
moved, they moved, especially my sister because she had my nieces very young at
Right.
19. And so my mom kind of played favorites. She doesn't like to say that, but she played favorites to cater to what our needs were. But I was a child that she didn't have to worry about. And so
Right.
it was like, she's got it figured out. If she needs me, I'm here. But other than that, do your thing. Whereas with my sister, she was able to accomplish a lot faster because my mom acted as her co-parent.
Okay. And
Uh,
see
yeah.
that. Oh no, no, no. I'm just saying that I'm the oldest, and you just literally said everything about me
Mhm.
because my parents. And so I had kids early. I mean, when I say I had kids early, I was 17, getting ready to turn 18, and my parents never asked me if I needed help because my parents just figured I was, the way I was going to figure it out. Nobody just say, hey, you need some help with this with the kids. Hey, should we get the kids this, that, and the other thing? It was always on me to do it. And I'm proud that, that I always did whatever was necessary for my kids. But it would have been nice to say, hey, let us help you out. So you're not working these ridiculous hours and this, that, and the other thing. And again, I was a handful as a kid. You know, I was not bad. I was just in the stuff. That's
Mhm.
completely different than being bad.
Okay.
So, but yeah, and again, my parents raised independent boys. You know, you said, my mom always told us, you don't want to have to depend on anybody to take care of you. You want to find a partner in life. And I struggled with that because I wanted a partner in life, somebody who wanted to be my equal, but not try to wear the dress and the pants in the family. That just would, I mean, I like conflict. Maybe there's something wrong with me. I like a little conflict in my life, but I want that conflict to be us working towards something, not
Mhm.
us constantly arguing about, I don't know, who's a better parent or, some dumb shit that doesn't have to be that way. And again, this is the reason for these conversations because we need we need to get on track and our kids need to be the priority. And I find that a lot of times, even with men, when relationships fall apart, they take a back seat to being there for their kids. And that's men across the board. They take a back seat because, and in some cases, I know that you have a difficult parent on the other side that just makes it literally impossible, to be a part of your child's life because everything that you do, there's some sort of fight and whatnot. And in those cases, I believe that it may be better to take a step back, give your child a chance to get a little bit older for them to make their own decisions
Mhm.
because two people fighting in front of a child, especially once it gets physical, is is never okay. Is
Far
never
worse.
okay. I do not care what the situation is. If y'all cannot be together without fighting in front of your kids, okay, go your separate ways. And if you cannot communicate in the best way for your kids, once you're separated, somebody has to do something. And it always has to be in the best interest of the kids. It can't be about your feelings. It has to be about what's best for your kids. My girls have been probably spent 80% of their life living with me, you know, and have I, again, I'll tell you that I have failed in many ways and it's primarily in my ability to communicate, but it was something I was never taught. So hearing that, you're the independent one that, nobody focuses on, I'm like, oh my God, this is a female version of me. I mean, you seem like a better communicator though.
Debatable if I'm caffeinated.
That's fair. That's fair. So it, so do you talk to your dad now?
No, my dad and I
Really?
have not communicated since I think the last time we spoke was 2012.
Okay. Oh, you know what? Yeah, you did say when you first graduated.
Mhm. And
Yep, that's
so, you said that you taught your daughters how to be independent. A
yeah,
lot of my independence came from traumatic experiences.
right.
So, when my stepdad, I think he had kicked us out for, like, the night or something like that because
Mm,
they had argued. And I remember getting on the bus at, like, 8 o'clock in the morning with a bag packed full of stuff, and I was like, "I will never be in a position where somebody allows me to dictate where I lay my head at night."
right,
And that's why I have always been the child that's like, I will always make sure that I have plan A, B, and C, and that I always have savings and that I always have my ducks in a row because the last thing that I want is to be in a position where somebody has the ability to take something away from me. And
right.
that's been my saving grace from the
Mm,
difficult relationships that I've had to leave. But it also has, you had mentioned earlier you didn't want to be with somebody who had to wear both the pants and the
yeah,
dress in the
who
relationship.
wanted to try to do both jobs.
Right, and so for me, that's been very hard to emotionally be in a space where I feel safe enough with somebody to be
Mhm,
vulnerable in that way.
right,
Because people that have shown up in my life, like family members, like previous partners, when I am showing up in that level of vulnerability, in that level of femininity, in that level of softness, it has been taken advantage of.
right,
And so I have to, and that's the crazy thing about discernment. A lot of times discernment doesn't just come because things are peachy and great and everything is working out.
right.
From, in my case, it came from grief. It came from ultimate betrayal. It came from lies. It came from manipulation. It came from loss. And
Mhm,
I had to really buckle down and examine what my boundaries were, how I want people to show up in my life, what I'm willing to pour into. And now I'm in a space, especially now that my son's dad and I have recalibrated our relationship.
right,
Um, my ex-husband was the catalyst for that, though, because the level of betrayal that he played within my own family dynamics with my sister and mom, that really. showed me, 1, who the Judas was in my camp. And it did. And then 2, um, because my sister had been in this one-sided competition with me my whole life, and my
Mm,
mom played into that because I wasn't codependent on her in the way that my other siblings were, and that was an issue. When I say sometimes when your parents see that you are willing to do the hard work, have the hard conversations. "Hey, I'm not gonna stay in this relationship because it's not beneficial for me. Hey, I'm
right,
not stay in this career because it's not beneficial for me." When your parents see that you are able and capable and willing to do things differently than they do, they take it as an insult. Like, my
right,
parents are good enough, and so it's like I can't build my mom's self-esteem and try to break generational cycles. I can't do both.
right.
Right. All I can do is recognize what is not gonna work for me going into the future and make the decision and stand on it, even if
Agree.
that means hurting somebody else's feelings, and I'm
Right.
okay.
Yeah. And I think that we all need to learn. We all need to learn that say, hey, if you are going to continue to bring drama to my life, we have to put some distance between you and me.
Mhm.
And for years, I allowed so many things to put stress on me that I didn't really need to put up with. But because it was for the sake of the relationship with my kids, it was for the sake of keeping a roof over my head because, you know what, maybe we were staying with a family member and we had to put up, no, not we. I had to put up with excess bullshit that nobody should have to put up with, but I dare not put my kids in a situation where we don't have a place to stay,
Mhm.
you know? So I just know that there are like at this point, at this point in my life, I am good with not talking to people because you know what? I've done the things that I needed to do. Nobody's in jail. Nobody's pregnant. Nobody's on drugs. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, that's such a low bar. You know, it that shouldn't be the thing if you say, well, I get everything that I needed to do done, and if you guys want to act a fool, hey, I did what I needed to do. It shouldn't be that way. But sometimes we do have to put distance between ourselves and the people that we love just because if you cannot respect my space or the way that I do things, you know what, there's going to be a problem and there's always going to be a conflict. So I want to fix relationships, but that's going to take time. It's going to take for me to understand my own process and how I need to, how can I go into this relationship with this person and build better? You know, we're not going to keep drumming up the past. You made a ton of mistakes. I've made some, but I'm owning mine.
That's the part, is the
Yeah.
accountability.
Yes.
You can't heal anything without accountability. You
Right.
can't heal anything without honesty,
Right.
and you can't heal anything when only one party is willing to do the work. It requires when you said reciprocity earlier, that's
Mm,
a part of it. It's a two-way street.
right.
Who is willing to do the work? And that means acknowledging the demons of the past or the things that, again, either party needed to work on.
Right.
Um, that's, going to therapy, whatever your form of therapy may be, right? Formal, EMDR, therapy, CBT, a pastor, somebody,
Right.
and rebuilding a quality support circle, meaning one of the points that you had talked about earlier was the weight of titles within our culture, within family dynamics. Well, I'm saying, well, I forgive her because that's my mom. Well, I
Yeah.
forgive her because that's my sister. I forgive her because that's my brother. But if we are using the title of family for the sake of doing somebody wrong and expecting to be automatically excused for that,
Right.
we don't look at family the same way, then that title doesn't hold the same weight because when I look at family, the world is already hard enough.
Thank you.
The world is already hard enough. So when you come inside your safe space, when you come inside your home or your support circle or family, that needs to be a safe space. And if it's not, and your behavior is causing me harm physically, emotionally, spiritually, financially, you are no longer a safe person for me.
Right.
And if
Mm,
you are not willing to acknowledge your shortcomings and do the work to work on it to rebuild this relationship, you are already telling me where I stand with you.
right.
And
So
there's nothing I could do about that.
right. For me, all right, we're related. I'm your cousin, whatever. Actually, we'll say I'm your brother. We have conflicts, from our past, whatever it is. We're both agreeing to, you know what, hey, we want to fix our relationship. But
Mhm.
every time, things get a little, I don't know, a little choppy between us, I start bringing up old shit. and not focused on us in the present and fixing our relationship. How do you deal with that? How do we have this conversation? Like you got to stop bringing up the old stuff, man. And we're trying to move forward. What's your advice for, fixing these things?
One thing I will say is the minute the relationship starts getting choppy again, or you're talking about a topic that it starts bringing up emotions to the point
Right.
where it's bringing up old situations, take a step back really quick and say, what is it about what this person just said that is triggering this emotion in me? Name the
Mm,
emotion first before you focus on the statement, because the weight of your feelings, again, if the body carries trauma, right? If the body remembers first before the mind is able to process exactly what is going on, right? What is it about this moment of what is being talked about that is triggering something in my body, and working through that emotion first?
okay. So more looking to understand versus respond.
Absolutely. And
Okay.
feeling the emotion. That's another
r-
thing.
Yeah.
If the
Because,
body holds trauma, we
uh-huh.
have to do the work to release it from our body. And it comes in different ways. I was not the biggest believer in EMDR
Mm,
until after I had gotten out of the service. Obviously, I did my bachelor's in psychology. And then I
okay.
said, you know what? I'm already boots on ground with people in the community.
Right.
Let me see if social work is more of an avenue that I want to do. And I have a little bit more options as far as like if I ever decide to hang my boots up.
Right. Okay. So,
Seeing how
uh,
the people carry the emotion, a lot of the times when you show up to these calls and you're trying to decipher in 30 minutes, 30 years of family issues, and you're listening, but you're watching people's body movements. If
okay.
I'm angry and it's showing in my chest and I'm heaving and I'm pacing around and I'm clenching my hands and I'm clenching my jaw, what is it about all of these emotions I have not released yet? The body has to release it.
Mhm.
Dancing, somatic exercises, massage therapy, all of these things contribute to releasing your body, releasing that trauma.
Right. And see, these are the things that people don't know about. They don't know. We don't know how to get help. We don't know, why this is happening. And we need to be okay with expressing ourselves, getting help. You know, but I will say this about counseling and whatnot, because I don't think there's anything wrong with counseling. But I think that sometimes counseling is used as a weapon against whomever you're having your issues with. So
Mhm.
I go to counseling. I tell my counselor all my problems and this, that, and other thing. I'm having this traumatic issue in my relationship, this traumatic, issue with my spouse, my father, whatever have you. Well, then a lot of times these therapists are giving advice based on a one-sided story. You know, so now we'll say Daniel, comes back home and says, "Well, listen, I can't talk to you because my therapist is saying that you're toxic and everything." But really, the therapist is giving advice based on one portion of the story. And it's not
Therapy is
all.
about you.
Yeah.
It's about you. It's not about necessarily the other person. It is how
Right.
are you processing the
Okay.
situations in your life. Now, if it's couples therapy, which again, that's its own specialty, completely different because now they have access to two people in the same
Mm,
engaged in open dialogue.
okay.
Right? So they're able to recognize patterns, things that are repetitive themes that are coming up in the relationship dynamic. It's
Okay.
different. But when you're talking about typically individual therapy, it is
Mhm.
more so, I feel like, and this is just my personal opinion, I feel like it
That's
is
fine.
more for that individual to be able to process
Gotcha.
their thinking patterns, how it's showing up in their life decisions, how it's affecting their own family dynamics, and how they want to move forward or past whatever hump they're at in
Right.
life. Cause them to say, you know what, man, I really do think that I should talk to somebody about some of the things
Mhm.
I'm struggling with.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I know, what, that makes sense. I just, like I said, I've talked to a bunch of people and even family, who are going, go to counseling or whatnot. I'm a vet, I've been, but I've tried to, separate the counsel. My counseling is different, from, some people's, dealing with PTSD and that, but, you know, learning, and you know what, I'll use the PTSD as an example. So before I learned to recognize certain issues,
Mhm.
so like certain smells will bother me, especially after my deployment, it would bother me. But what I didn't realize was happening, it would make me upset, because it triggered a memory, and then somebody would walk by, somebody would do something, and I was upset about that, and I would lash out.
Mhm.
You know, hey, I told you guys to do this. I keep asking, nobody, but that's not even the issue. The
Yep.
issue is that I'm dealing with a memory, and I am very uncomfortable right now. So now that has triggered me to lash out in other ways.
Mhm.
And so through counseling, I have learned to recognize certain things. Like even when I go to the movies, I'm very mindful of what movies I go see. And other times for a long time, I didn't go see any war movies or anything like that. Anything where I would feel the concussion and stuff, But through time and whatnot, I've gotten a little bit better. I can tolerate it now,
Mhm.
but it also doesn't trigger me in a way that makes me that doesn't make me mad. Because being sad is not an emotion that had been available to me for God. Like I said, I'm 52. Being able to express sadness, I in the last 5 to 10 years, I've really been able to express myself in that way, which is depressing as hell. But,
But there's growth. You can't don't take away from that, and that's the thing. I feel like, we're harder on ourselves
right,
when, again, we don't have a blueprint, right? Like, you have to
mm,
understand that when you are conscious of not having a healthy blueprint and still
right,
trying to continuously show up to do the hard work to get
yeah,
past that point, you can't discredit yourself for the work that you've done.
yeah,
Even myself, I feel like Billy Madison half the time when I'm in class with all these grad students too, because I realize that, when we talk about, people in crises or
right,
do psychosis, and I'm like, I'm telling them about a call that I was on, and in their minds, they're like, I can't imagine seeing that in real time, and I'm like, "Well, get ready because once we get licensed, this is what's gonna happen," It's we're dealing with sensitive minds, and so I realized that because I did not have the support,
yeah,
I had to figure things out on my own. A lot of a lot of life things, right? Like how to buy my first home, how to buy a car, how to, what was subsidized loans, unsubsidized loans the first time
right,
that I go through school, and then going through school the second time once I got out, and Uncle Sam was like, "No, we'll pay for everything." But still, I could not depend on my mother to show me how to be a functional adult
right,
because her mindset growing up from um, my grandmother was a housewife. She
right,
still doesn't know how to drive to this day because my grandfather didn't want her to get a license, and so I have to understand how those relationship dynamics generationally, how they got passed down and how
right,
minds got passed down. So don't discredit yourself for where you're at because when you really look at how this is a generational thing, when you go back and you look at the patterns and you start asking the hard questions, certain things really start to click
right, and
as to how we got here.
right, and unfortunately, not enough of us learn about this conversation even.
Mm,
Not enough of us learn to recognize, hey, this has been going on for a long damn time,
mhm,
and I need to stop it before I pass more stuff on. And unfortunately, I have passed some of my traumas on, to my kids, but I've actively been working on fixing those things, explaining to them, hey, this is not the way. I was raised this way. I'm gonna assume I'm a little older than you. I was raised where kids were seen and not heard.
yes.
Hey, you do what I tell you,
Mhm,
and that's it. For a while there, that's how it was with my kids. You know, listen, I'm not I'm not gonna keep asking you to do stuff. Please do not make me repeat myself because we're gonna have some problems.
mhm,
You know, and like even for years, like I used to spank my kids, and then when I joined the military, I had some issues and whatnot, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to continue to spank my kids. One, am I spanking them because they've done something wrong? Am I spanking them because I'm mad about whatever the issue is? So I stopped spanking them, and I mean, and believe it or not, PT for my kids changed a lot of things. The
mm,
military, the military
mhm.
taught me PT, and I said, "You know what? We're gonna go outside and run for a little bit to
You either
correct."
get smart or strong.
Yeah, and that's it. And I'm telling you right now, all my girls can do push-ups. All the
Mm,
boys can do push-ups. My son joined the Air Force, and they're in there getting yelled at. He said, "Dad, there was," and he's bragging about it. He's like, "Dad, it's people in there crying and whatnot." I'm like, "Man, they didn't even say nothing to y'all." Like, man, you couldn't survive at my house. My dad would have tore y'all apart. You know, they ain't saying
Tuesday.
nothing.
This
You
is
know,
Tuesday.
yeah, this
This
is
is
yeah,
Tuesday.
yeah, this is just Tuesday at my house. So I mean, there are some positive things that have come out of it. And again, I am happy that I stopped spanking my kids and we
Mhm.
turned to PT. And but it was a way for me to know for sure that this was not. I'm not putting my hands on my kids and maybe potentially hurting somebody.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm the same way. I don't spank. I didn't even spank my nieces,
yeah,
and we're the same. We grew up in a house where, again, see not heard. What happens in this house stays in this house. When I tell you
yeah,
to do something, you do it. Um, stay in a child's place. Don't talk
yeah.
back. So again, when my son came around, it was like a whole it was like a life or death experience. When they say that you really do transform after you have a child, I didn't
Right.
understand it until my son got here. Where it was like the level of mama bear that came out before is for anybody's kids. Now it's on tenfolds because this is my little person, right? And so whomever, whatever person, place, or thing that has the potential to affect this little person's safety
Mhm.
mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, I am willing to go to war to ensure that I have peace.
There you go.
And I think people understood, especially within my family dynamic,
Right,
how important that was to me until I had to have those hard conversations. Hey, I can't be friends with my sister. We can no longer have a relationship because if you are jealous hearted of me, if you have this one-sided competition, if you feel like my life was easier than yours, even though I picked two of the hardest life paths you could possibly pick,
right.
uh, to take as far as career wise, the things that I've experienced in intimate relationships that maybe they don't know all the details, you know? If you feel like my life is easy, that you're willing to sabotage things that are going well for me, I'm not interested. If
Right.
my mom lives in a constant state of mental denial of the things that she exposes to younger, the things that she just refuses to acknowledge. And I have to understand she's not ready to process that yet. And that's okay. I'm not
Yeah,
judging you for that. But I cannot have you in my space with my child and that kind of access because
right.
it's unsafe. That pattern itself is unsafe.
See, so Savannah, I want to ask you a question because something in your profile stood out to me. So you're talking about surviving, you
Mhm.
know, when did you realize like surviving, was when surviving isn't actually being okay? You're just getting by. When did you realize that that's not enough?
When I left my ex-husband, excuse me, when I left my ex-husband, it was due to his infidelity. He's an army guy.
Hmm.
He's retired, but he works as a sexual assault response coordinator in a reserve base in
Okay,
Chicago. So I had packed up my life and moved out there with him.
gotcha.
And when I had found out that he was still suffering from PTSD, wasn't taking his medications, wasn't going to see a psychiatrist at the VA, the promiscuity of sleeping around with people, the impulsive decisions, all of the above. When I had left and came back to Washington, and
Mm,
I really sat with myself and I had a conversation, I called Shanae, my therapist, and I said, I'm really over being in a constant state of hypervigilance, of survival, of choosing the wrong partners or
mm,
picking people that, they need help. I help
right,
people at work all the time. I help my family members all the time. I'm the therapist. I'm the sturdy one. I'm the emotional regulator, but I'm not the doormat.
right,
And I don't wanna be the doormat, and if these people are showing up in my life and they do not respect me and cannot be safe for me, that's not thriving, this is
right,
surviving. I don't wanna continuously be in a cycle where I feel like I've lost something. What's the definition of insanity? Continuously doing the same thing, expecting a different result, right? That's the thing we talk about in the military all the time. So, I had to realize, like, trying to go to my mom for life advice, telling my
mhm,
sister about all of the positive endeavors that were going on in my life. If those are the two common denominators of when things are going great and then they start falling apart, maybe I need to sever those relationships because once I removed the rotten fruit from the fruit bowl,
right,
the rest of the fruit was fine. And then when I realized, listen, you've always been the independent one that's already had to make the hard decisions. You've already been doing all of the hard things on your own. I don't need to carry the weight of my ex-husband. Hey, you are financially independent. Hey, you are doing the work to work on your mental health. Hey, you are calling out the unhealthy family dynamics and patterns within your own family and mindsets. Your mom's not willing to acknowledge it. But do
So
you want your son to go through the same thing? And so once I pulled all of that back and really processed it and sat with it, and there's grief. There's grief in having to let people go. There's grief in realizing this person just does not have the capability to show up the way that I need them to. But
right,
I have an obligation to show up not only for myself, but for my son. He didn't
right.
have a choice in how he got here. And so recognizing that was the cutoff for me of I need to be able to thrive.
Right. And see, and that's something I wish, again, I wish I had learned sooner, but I'm still happy that I learned it, that everything is about my kids.
Yeah.
And it always, for me, it always has been. But for me, I was all about my kids, but still dealing with negative things that I shouldn't have allowed because
Mhm.
it relationships harder, and my kids saw a lot of things that they shouldn't have been exposed to, but not understanding that this is a generational thing. It's a cycle, and I need to stop it with me.
Mhm.
I remember, growing up when my mom, uh, her ex were together. I remember to this day them fighting on the kitchen floor. That made me never to see my mom like that. I was like, I would never put my hands on a woman, not
Mhm.
ever. And if you are the type of woman that can make me so mad that I'm thinking about putting my hands on you, you got to go. You got to go because that never, never would I ever. And the same thing I teach my boys. Like even when we do things like I'm raising, at first I'm raising girls, and I'm always talking to them about protecting themselves and, hey, do not go out with, when you're out, do not let people buy you drinks. Be mindful of your surroundings and this, that, and the other thing. And I realized I shouldn't have to teach them that. People should be telling their boys to keep their goddamn hands to themselves. Don't do dumb shit. So when my son came along, that was one of the things that I made sure that I told him, like, listen, if you find a girl in a vulnerable situation, you stay the hell away from that. Get her some help, whatever. But you never, ever, under any circumstance, take advantage of that.
Mhm.
And I found that, he's like the things that he does, like, so, he's married now and he's very mindful of how he speaks to his wife. He's very mindful of, you know, the dynamic between men and women. And
Yes.
I like, how do we get more? I know, like, we're sitting here talking and everything. There's a generation, mine and your generation, being, our ages and everything, that
Yeah.
none of them are having these conversations with their kids, or none of them are recognizing the cycle that they need to break in order to have a better relationship with their kids. And that most of the time, yeah, most of the time it's an absent father, black, white, Puerto Rican, Mexican, whatever. It's an absent father, and we haven't found a way to break these cycles.
And I think so even with my son's dad, he's
Yeah.
Chinese, Black.
Mhm.
Um, we have 2 different cultures, but
Right.
recognizing and understanding some of the stressors that he has in his own family dynamics and some
Right.
of the things that we have had conversations about as far as intentional parenting.
Right.
I had that mentality of drive, independence. This is what I need to do. This is what needs to get done. He has a very different understanding of that, but he's also very calm and he's never yelled and he's never um, called me out my name or been disrespectful in that sense.
Right.
Now, lied to by my family members, which is
Right.
how we separated. Um, but once we came back together, and my son's very young, so
Yeah.
that's another thing is like, 0 to 5 are the most important years, and then, when I'm
Yeah.
reading, child development and Bronfenbrenner and Davies and Troy's and all of the, and talking about the biopsychosocial model and Erickson and Freud, when I'm going over these theories and concepts in class and I'm comparing it to my situation and my son, having that additional information is great. How do I actually apply this to my life? That's how
Okay.
I feel about it. And with my son's dad, us having open communication
Right.
and being intentional about the things that we want to change from how we both grew up in our parents' relationships or family dynamics. That's how we're both showing up in parenting, you
Right.
know? Um,
Absolutely.
and being honest, when you're meandering towards marriage, there are certain bullet points that you really have to hit above just, "He's attractive, she's attractive, they have a good
Right.
job, they have great benefits." You have to really get into the weeds of, this is somebody that's gonna birth your child. This is somebody that's gonna help you when you have a sick parent. This is somebody that's gonna be your backbone if you lose your job, if you get into a disability, if you lose a limb, if you right? This is a person that you have is gonna dictate what medically is gonna happen to you if you're incapacitated. So when you have to start thinking about things that way and you really start building towards building with with someone, again, I didn't have a blueprint for that. We weren't
Right.
having those conversations growing up. So, trial and error, getting into adulthood, seeing the things that were wrong, repeating some patterns, and then saying, "I have to show up different."
I
Have the
know that.
conversation. Have the
Yeah.
hard conversations, though. Get a great support group. And then one thing I will say is, you brought up the good point of, I shouldn't just be teaching my daughters protection.
Yeah.
They constantly need to protect themselves. People should be teaching their sons how to behave,
Right.
how to show up. And to another point of that, from a social standpoint, when men don't show up, there doesn't seem to be any social consequence.
Mhm.
Meaning, if you have a friend group and one guy's cheating on his wife, the guys aren't going to get together and say, "Hey, man, we can't be friends no more. Your moral compass don't go the way
Right.
that I roll. So I'm good. There's no social consequence." And so even if a guy, again, may put his hands on his wife and people know about it, there's no social consequence of, I can't be friends with you. It's like,
Right.
well, maybe she did say something or she did something that caused you to act out. There's no social consequence. And so when we live in a culture that, even if as a man you have exhibit poor or bad behavior, but there's no social loss to that, what do? You just end up repeating the same things later on in life because nobody is correcting you. And if the
Right.
only way that you receive correction is loss of a relationship with your kids, loss of a relationship with a spouse, maybe loss of finances, maybe jail time, depending on the far extreme of it. If that
Right.
is the only way to curtail behavior, it starts with mindset first. It starts with culture. It starts with shifting that mindset and culture. We
Okay.
can't just get to poor behavior and calling it out without addressing the elephant in the room, which
Right.
is, we're not calling people out and holding people accountable,
Right.
even as neighbors, even as friends, even as boys, even as family members. And women into that as well,
Right.
right?
So I'm gonna backtrack a little bit. I want to talk about a little bit about parenting and breaking cycles. What for you? If you're in your field, okay,
Mhm.
what does breaking the cycle look like? I mean, in real time.
In real time,
Yes.
that means calling out the behavior,
Hmm.
doing the work, meaning you're either going to therapy, you are dealing with whatever the issue is at hand and acknowledging it to be able to productively move forward. Now, with the
Mm.
families that I have run into consistently at work, as far as like, you show up to multiple calls, sometimes it is because, again, I work with people on the extremer end of life.
Hmm.
Sometimes it is getting a no contact order. Sometimes it is getting a protection order. Sometimes it is filing for that divorce and having the parenting plan and separating from your abuser, man or woman, right? Um, Sometimes it is going to family therapy. Sometimes it is taking court-ordered parenting courses. And so, again, the families that I deal with, those are the ones that they're calling 911 because they're having the worst day of their life. It's
Hmm.
not a matter of, um and a lot of times resources play into it because we live in a society where healthcare is correlated with occupation,
Right.
private insurance, Medicaid, Medicare. Those things determine your access and then quality of access to providers, right? So that's something else that we have to take into consideration because resources are huge. Poverty itself is traumatic.
Right.
And so, like I said, with some of the families that I deal with, it is taking a path that to others may seem like they're losing, but in all actuality, they have the ability to start over. It just looks different and it looks difficult and it feels difficult because you have been accustomed to functioning in something for so long that
Right.
when chaos stops, You think something is wrong because what was chaotic for anyone else, that was a Tuesday for you.
Right. So, with that being said, what's the first step you would you would give to anybody trying to break a cycle?
I always give resources.
Okay.
And I
Okay.
know and I don't pressure because it has to come from a place of like I said, I can talk about my story all day, every day
Right.
without being judgmental. But in some cases, I can, have my gavel. If you do me wrong, I got the gavel and I have the right to give you a sentence. But um, coming from a place of being non-judgmental, this isn't my necessarily family dynamic where I'm dealing with people on the street, but I'll give you information. And so the next time that I see you and the next time after that and the next time after that, especially when we talk about domestic violence abuse victims, on
Mhm.
average, it's people 8 times before they leave their abuser. If I give her a pamphlet or if I give him a pamphlet 8 plus times, and if I give them a name of a counselor, if I give them a resource as far as the shelters that I volunteer at, hey, if you ever wanna reach out, and I'll write a counselor's name that you could contact with on the resource packet. If I show up and I'm continuously showing up in that way from a non-judgmental lens and they feel like, "Man, I don't really like cops, but she's cool," or, "She comes here 3 times a week, but she's never judged me," or,
Right.
she never said, "You're dumb for not leaving him," or vice versa. She's never said to him, "Oh, you need to get another wife," and this, that, and the fourth. Just realizing that, again, not everybody's had the blueprint, not everybody's had a healthy one, and we're all just living a human experience. Give them the resources, let them take the leap to do the work.
Wow. I love it. Hey, we need more of that. That is for sure. So, a couple more questions, and I want to talk about your book. Okay, so got a young son.
Yes.
As he's getting older, what do you want your son to know about your journey to being
I
the mom you are today?
I want him to know that I really tried to do the work
Mhm.
to ensure that he had a happy life, that he
Right.
had as many options to choose from, and that it always comes from a place of love and a place of protection.
Mhm.
And my journey has not been easy, but I hope that he can see the real work that was put in order to be able to ensure that he had happiness.
Hey, man. All right, so I got one more question, but I'm gonna save that to last because I want you to get the last word. Let's talk about the book.
Okay. So,
Word's yours.
I ended up writing a book, In the Wake of Wounds: A Soul's Revival,
Okay.
and it kinda just talks about my journey from 2020 to 2025. So within that time frame, I gave birth to my son, left my son's dad, was still in school full time, still at work full time, ended up losing my brother to suicide in 2022.
Oof.
Um, Left a marriage, left my ex-husband, and then tried to recommunicate and reengage with my son's dad once I had learned that, my mom and sister had lied about a lot of the things that my son's dad did or didn't do. Like
Right.
they lied about a lot of things just because, again, they just didn't want to see us. They didn't want me to see me break the cycle of having a healthy
Right.
relationship. And so all of that is encompassed in this book, and it's poetry. It's calling out the things that you don't like to name in family dynamics. Name the thing, right?
Right.
And when we talk about grief, it allowed me to grieve my brother's death in a way that I don't think we talk about grief, because grief is not somebody just passing on. I also had to grieve the loss of my support dynamic at the time.
Right.
And so um, I remember the class specifically, Dr. Jody. It was on death in American society and how we as a culture deal with death. And I thought it was important for me to take that course. It's actually a nursing course, but I
Right.
actually ended up getting a slot there because I said, what I deal with death investigations all the time. Processing, again, being the person that shows up to death investigations and going through it that way, and you're the person on the other end, and then dealing with my brother's death of like, now I have to process
Mhm.
this. Now I have to clean his belongings up. Now I have to um, make funeral arrangements. The book allowed me to do that and get it
Okay.
all. So yeah, that is just work of raw, unfiltered thoughts.
So where can we find the book?
You can find it on Barnes& and Nobles and Amazon.
Okay, outstanding.
Ye
What's the name of the book again?
In the Wake of Wounds: The Soul's Revival.
Outstanding. All right. So final question. Okay. So final question is, and it's about family. So
Mhm.
what would you say to someone trying to change their family story?
Someone trying to change the family story. You cannot, and this is something that I've heard, but you cannot break generational cycles while you are still seeking the approval of that same generation. Meaning, if people are not willing to sit down at a table, be fully raw, exposed,
Right.
durable, honest, you can't heal. You can't move past that. So until you're able to have that sit down and conversation where everybody is willing to hold themselves accountable and whatever role that they played, because even for me, it required a level of self-abandonment for my family members to do the things that they did to me, my spouses to do the things that they did to me, my spouse to do the thing that he did to me. And so it's one of those things where it's like, I have to recognize that that was my shortcoming.
Mhm.
And so have that honesty, move forward.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Miss Savannah Brown, thank you so much. Listen, I hope men can see this and understand, our impact on our kids, daughters, sons, whatever. And I hope that more people will seek help. I
Yeah,
know that counseling in our community is just always been one of those things that it's I
taboo.
don't yeah,
It's
there you go.
taboo.
I hope more people can just get help that they need so they can mend fences, build relationships and end some of our generational trauma.
Yes.
So um I cannot wait. You know,
Okay.
so
Well, thank you so much for
no,
having
no problem with you. Listen, I know you were a little worried, about the conversation and that, but hey, I am so glad we had this conversation. And,
me too.
I feel, thank you for, even for the kind words with, telling me, hey, give yourself credit for the things that you are working on. I genuinely appreciate that. It's not easy,
Mhm.
and again, I'm a work in progress and I can admit that,
That's
but
the
I am,
beauty of it.
yeah.
That's honest. That's the beauty of it. That's the work. That's yeah.
Yeah. So thank you again. I'm gonna stalk you kind of on your Instagram and that. I'm not gonna make it weird, but I like to see some of the stuff that people are doing. So, and
Sounds good.
if you got something that you ever want to share and you need some help sharing it, please let me know. I'd be happy to share it for you.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is our show for today. Miss Savannah Brown, again, thank you so much. We appreciate having you.
Thank you again.
All right.